Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, I am Anis Fidausi and today I will present my team to share with you guys about what is happening in this SHP CEO cases. So basically at that time the CEO was hurt, which is the CEO of the company of SHP for 5 years, and at the same time he also served a chairman of the board director for 4 years. HP at that time had hired a Playboy model, which is Jodie Fisher, to host several HP events in California. On one occasion, Hurt tried to sexually harass Fisher, and over the next 2 years, he tried to convince Fisher by passing inside information. So after Fisher made complaint to the BOD has begun an investigation to find out is it true that Hurt has really sexually harassed her. So HP did not find any supporting evidence to support what has Fisher complained, but BOD has uncovered expense irregularities about 20,000 as he failed to maintain an accurate expenses report and also misused the assets of the company. So subsequently, Hurt resigned instead of being fired. After his resignation, he even received compensation 50 million, so it's not fair for him. So overall, HP lost more than 49 billion in market capitalization after Hurt resigned. So there are two ethical issues identified, which is the first one is a sexual harassment and the second one is inaccurate expense report. But the question is, does this consider unethical? So in order for us to evaluate whether this ethical issue is sexual harassment and inaccurate expense report is ethical or not, we have find some theory to make evaluation. So for the first theory is the theory of egoism that explained a person should make a decision that maximizes his or her self-interest. This means that the incorrect cost reported by Mark Hurt is to hide the cost of dinner and travel with Fisher is to maximize his self-interest and can be considered as ethical. Apart from that, sexual harassment is even wrong in the law, but to Hurt, this is a good thing to maximize one's own interest. As a result, both actions are considered to be acceptable under this theory and can be considered as ethical. However, the golden rule of does what you want to do to others teach us to treat others what we want to be treated. People are considered ethical if they do what they say in religion, such as not doing bad and exploiting others' advantage. Apart from that, sexual abuse make unwanted people interested in relationships which they find immoral. Furthermore, the falsification of expenditure to cover one's own self-interest, which make us business and make economic decisions, is not considered unethical, as we must be honest and truthful in doing business. Apart from that, we also choose a utilitarian theory that emphasizes decision-making that achieve the best outcome for oneself and others that result in the greater benefit for the largest number of people. However, sexual assault has heavily affected sexual victims. Moreover, falsifying the expenses in the value statement lead the other entity to make the wrong decision, resulting in the loss. Both actions are considered unethical under this theory. Finally, deontology theory is an ethical theory using rules to distinguish right from or wrong. Ethical correctness is mean that the ethical correctness is evaluated and justified based on activity rules. In this case, business should not compromise sexual assault that is explicitly specified in the company policy, and falsifying expenses is called violating company conduct. Therefore, both acts are immoral as the rules say. In conclusion, take all the justification that I shared with you just now. Sexual harassment and falsification of the expenses are considered unethical as they have had a negative impact on many people and have really violated the rule laid down. So we have to understand what is the ethical issue arise in these cases. So what is the way for the company to avoid the sexual claim? Therefore, to avoid any sexual claim harassment in future, employer must be proactive in first, we examine the current policy and update it when needed. It means that first of all, the company should ensure that the former written policy, which is the policy on anti-harassment and discrimination policy, are in place. And the company must always review the existing policy and update the policy after organizational changes or new legislative changes in order to avoid monetary payment and damage to reputation. And the second is the company must obtain the employment practice liability insurance. From the policy made, the company should determine whether, in the event of the sexual harassment, the company is in a position to avoid any monetary payment by obtaining insurance. Other than that, revise the employee handbook to include an arbitration clause for any dispute between the employee and the employer that may help to protect the company from bad publicity and avoid the risk of being penalized. The third is make sure employees are aware of business policy. The company may provide physical or electronic copies directly to each employee and ask them to sign an acknowledgement form. Keep detailed record of when the policy were distributed and how they were distributed. As a result, a business can use this evidence to avoid the punishment. And also, a company must ensure that a policy are effective. What they can do is companies should ensure that each employee receives a copy of the policy that provide a clear explanation of prohibited conduct, including a specific example. And then the company can always encourage employee to report any concern or complaint immediately. So the company should also have a specific procedure in place for employees to follow if they believe they have been the victim of harassment or discrimination. Lastly, prompt corrective action must be taken to resolve the issue of harassment. What I can do is then train the employee, because we know that just delivering policy will not be enough to create a strong culture of compliance. So it is vital to train the employee. The company should explain the duties and responsibility of employee in relation to harassment. This key employee need to know how to foster an inclusive environment and how to identify and eliminate problematic behavior. A company should also provide a detailed plan on how to respond appropriately to a complaint, including perspective for a prompt and a thorough investigation. Finally, keep detailed record of any training administered and update them on a periodic basis. So from what we have suggested just now, it can help the company to avoid any punishment, because there is evidence that the company is really make some policy into action. So for the second question, which is how expenditure in the case affect the financial result at HP. So the 20,000 expenditure that was falsified by Mark Hurt affected HP lower return. Moreover, the financial information is not true and fair when presented in accordance with accounting standard, as there are no details of the transaction to support the cost recorded. As a result of market wrongdoing, the company's share price also dropped by 10 billion the next day after the market resigned. In the book also, did financial fraud occur during the time Fisher was involved with Mark? Yes, before we answer this question, we have to understand for what is meant by financial fraud. Financial fraud is defined as an intentional act of deception involving financial transactions for the purpose of personal gain. So, in this case, financial fraud has occurred as Mark Hurt had the cost of dinner and travel with Fisher in the expenses account. An accurate expense report that covered the payment made to Fisher was sometimes paid for non-existent work, and even so, Hurt never disclosed the use of company fund being manipulated. The question is, should their relationship must be disclosed to the shareholder? If there is a special relationship between Hurt and Fisher, it must be disclosed to the shareholder. As we all know that Fisher is a marketing consultant hired by HP, and Mark also is the CEO of the company. By doing so, the shareholder will notice that they should take care of all the benefit that Fisher has received and assess whether it's worth to avoid the fraud happened. And then for the third question, which is, does executive resign due to unethical action must give back some compensation to the shareholder? Yes. In our opinion, executives who are resigned or fired as a result of unethical action should be forced to give back some compensation received equal to the amount forfeited by the executive and also the negative impact of the unethical action, such as the decline in stock price. This is because it is the responsibility of the CEO to be a good leader and to comply with the ethical rules laid down by the company. What is ignored in this case is the critical relevance of the tone at the top of the organization, which must be based on integrity and ethical value. The way in which the action of senior executives, in particular the CEO, drive the tone and corporate culture. Fail to do so, it is considered that it violated the rules. Failed to fulfill the duties entrusted to it and violated the company's standard of business conduct. The CEO who behaved unethically should not receive a severance package, but instead be punished. They should be asked to pay some of the amount to serve as a lesson to others who want to get involved in an ethical act. Moreover, the effect of bad reputation has some negative impact on the company's ability to bear the loss, as many investors are not willing to invest in a company that is engaged in fraud. Apart from that, this will be a great opportunity for the executive to correct their wrongdoing, especially when this unethical action has had a negative impact on many parties. Finally, the company will demonstrate a strong ethical culture resulting from the forced return of compensation by the unethical executive, as everyone will notice that the company is not compromised by the unethical action in the company. Let's move to the last question, which is the reason lapse occurs and way taken by organization to ensure that its top executively up the value of it exposed. So, among the reason for the lapse occurring is due to weakness of the board of director itself. The board members are supposed to acknowledge that it is their responsibility to ensure that the shareholder wealth is being maximized, as well as it is their obligation to preserve the company for a long-term period. For example, the BOD of HP in fact did not properly think of every consequence that the company would be facing with the announcement of Mark Hurd departures. The BOD was accused of breaching fiduciary duty in the way they had handled Hurd's resignation with the lucrative compensation given to Mark despite it being his own mistake to bear upon. And the second is the outlaw loyalty to the boss. You can take example in this case where Mark Hurd has falsified the expenses report and other financial documents. The money that he used was actually intended for his relationship purpose with Fisher. However, as a CEO, Mark Hurd never filed his own expense report because it was always done by his people, which is their subordinate. Therefore, even if there were error found or fraud, it would never be Mark's mistake because he never wrote the expense report. The third is the culture of conflict. Culture of conflict is a conflict between the cultural value of what is believed to be acceptable. It happened when these two clash, and this is what happened in HP. Mark Hurd had been breaking the code of conduct. In this case, Mark Hurd, who was the CEO of the HP that sat on the top of the management, had shown such unacceptable attitude. The employee cannot be merely blamed for not doing the right thing because they themselves had always been observing such behavior of their leader. People tend to be followers. They believe that the CEO doing was acceptable because it was the CEO who did, despite the fact that they did know how the rules should apply. This is where the culture of the conflict happens. It is between what the rules state and what people believe to be right. And the last is the conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is a person has his own personal interest in a situation that may be conflicting with the company interest. As in this case, Hurd had a personal interest in expressing Fisher, but he used his wealth, knowledge and power with the position he held in order to have an affair with her. He spent the company's money to pay Fisher for every event that she worked out. This situation is actually toxic toward every business. So how we want to overcome this issue? First of all, a company should reconsider executive compensation practice and align pay with the performance in setting up the value in the organization. For example, Hurd still get luxurious compensation, and this had caused the dissatisfaction among the shareholders. However, this decision making was due to the company's inability to do anything, as the compensation was a black and white agreement and contractual. If there were to be any objection, it should have been only during the signing of the contract. Moreover, the decision was made to ensure that Mark Hurd left the company in order to clean the name of the HP. Other than that, ways to overcome the lapse due to the factor of outlaw loyalty to the boss is by adding more clauses to executive contract and imposing punishment. A well-drafted moral clause is in an executive contract allow the company to take disciplinary action up to and including immediate discharge when the clause has been breached. For example, in this case, Mark Hurd has done many immoral behavior, but the company can easily let him resign with compensation of a total amount almost 50 million. After his resignation, he also able to become a CEO in another big company, which can be proof that it does not give any impact from his previous action. Supposedly, the punishment shall be properly imposed and the consequence shall be borne by the wrongdoing. Besides, a company also should demand the executive set the tone and follow the rules that have been made by the company. So the third executive shall display a good example for his worker to avoid the culture of conflict where the subordinate follow the leader's wrongdoing. For example, Mark Hurd falsified the company funds for his personal needs and he made his subordinate record the expense for him. It is a definite unethical behavior which includes the whole management to involve too. Hence, executives should act ethically as leaders who serve as a role model and mentor for all employees. From this, it can produce ethical employees and good environment in organization. Last but not least, a company should perform periodic unscreened spot check or ad hoc internal audit on executive claim. Internal auditor is the most independent group in the organisation to work and spot fraud done by the executive. Thus, they should make an inspection without giving any notice to make sure that there is no hidden information covered up by them. The wrongdoings done by Mark should have been able to be discovered earlier if the practice of ad hoc audit were to be adopted. For conclusion, we must always remember that whenever we do the decision, we have to evaluate whether our action is ethical or not. Whenever we do, people remember, especially the bad things. So in order for us to avoid such kind of impact to us in futures, we have to always remember what religion taught us. Avoid doing bad things and always think the impact or decision toward the other parties. Okay, that is the end of our presentation. We do hope that this video can add some information and beneficial to everyone. Thank you for watching the video. See you again.